All right, everybody, thank you so much. For those of you who are still going to be hopping on, no worries, this will be a recorded session. We'll share out the link so that everybody has access. And I just wanted to say thank you so much to those of you who could take the time, and we're going to get right into it. So when it comes to today's session, and for those of you who've seen this before, talking about Umango, this is going to be a familiar topic. For some of us, it's still very, very new. We're still learning a lot about it. And then there's some others who are still really looking at this for the first time. So we'll recap, we'll go through what kind of gets into what Umango is, a capture solution, right? And the idea today is to help all of our resellers to stay ahead of the competition, right? To stand out amongst the masses. We want to help you to be able to provide products and services, but really to help solve problems. And we know this today with other software solutions like PaperCut, another great solution that we support here at ecoprintQ and work with. I'm going to say 99 or 100% of you on this call today. And, that's what we're here to do, to provide that same support and service that you're used to for PaperCut for a new product, something that you guys can really explore and look to help solve some of those problems in your customer environments that maybe we weren't thinking about so much before. Now, what is Umango? Umango is the easiest to use and sell capture product on the market. And I do really mean this. It's really something that can be used to really streamline your scanning capabilities. And we do this with things like secure batch scanning, automated conversion and routing, zonal OCR, right? That ability to read text or data or maybe a barcode that's on a particular piece of paper as we're scanning it in. And then we can use that information. We can integrate with back-end systems. SharePoint, document management systems, whether or not they're on-prem or hosted in the cloud. We support Twain scanning in the browser. So maybe there's that person who sits at the desk and they're scanning in all of these, ancient archived documents, and they want to, streamline an interface that the person can work with while they sit at their computer and scan all of those documents in. And all in all, with kind of all of these key points, I think the message here, it's an all-in-one solution for any scanning environment. So if the customer is scanning, I'm sure we have a way to work with them. It's just about asking some of the right questions. And we'll cover some of this today and hopefully help uncover some opportunities that you can think about while we're going through today's presentation. So keep that in mind, and maybe think about a customer or two who does a lot of scanning, or maybe has a particular scanning workflow that they've either mentioned to you before or you could just relate to when working with them. So this is a simple refresher video. For those of us who haven't looked at it in a while, those of us who have, great and fine. I'm not sure if the audio is going to work, so I'm actually going to just turn it off here. And that way we can do that. So the Umango tool is designed to scan these files from any number of sources. And we talked about the Twain scanning. There's hot folders. There's ability to work with the actual touchscreen panel, the MFD, or even an email watched folder, which is one that's really cool and unique. And we actually have a good scenario to review. And when the customers are at the touchscreen panel of the device, they're able to kind of work through it just like they would with PaperCut. It's streamlined to have these scanning workflows. They hit the button and they can get it done. Now, whether or not it's complex like you're seeing in the video right now, and they're able to capture information off a barcode, or they're just simply wanting to convert the file maybe to an Excel format without grabbing any information whatsoever. So we can dumb it down or make it as complex as needed. And that's why it really is designed to meet all of these different customer environments. And when we're reading the information, we're making it a truly editable document as well. We can go ahead and make changes to it as needed. And here's an example of us capturing some information with Zonal OCR. We're looking at invoice, we're looking at customer information, the total, and don't worry, it's not just going to be the video today. We do have a welcomed guest speaker who I'm very excited to have present for y'all the actual software itself with the new version 20. So everything that you're kind of seeing that's happening in this video, we're going to go through in real live time. So let's move on from that. So when it comes to with PaperCut, with Umango, and what we can do in the new version, we've added a brand new user interface. And so it's simpler than ever. We're going to talk about that and really go through some examples, but the in-browser experience makes it so that when you're selling the solution to your customers, it's not too hard for them to understand and start picking up themselves. I'm no rocket scientist myself, and I've been able to create workflows. I can do the demos. I can go through any number of things, and it's just a matter of spending a little bit of time. And if your team is able to do the same thing, maybe you've set up this in your showroom before, you'll find that it very much resides in the area of being one of the easiest solutions out there. PaperCut fits into that space, and now you have Umango, but you have ecoprintQ to help support it as well. And once it is installed, I think the idea was that it would be simple enough that your end users could start creating some workflows, could start going through and maybe doing their own thing. They actually added a regex builder. This is more for my technical folks on today's call, just to cover this so that you know and understand that there is a regex builder to help you to define exactly what that data is that you want to pull off of that document. And having this built right into the Umango interface is just really nice for creating the workflows. And for those of us who have done it in the past, you can really see where having this kind of value when creating it just makes it that much quicker and that much easier. And that's why our install times are so low. All right, the job wizard. Now, this is, my favorite because it's what helps walk me through and everybody else through that, whether or not it's your first time or you're getting back into it and you want to do something a little bit more complicated or simple. The nice thing is today we don't have to go through a wizard. We're going to have the wizard himself do that demo, and we're going to do it with a nice product tour. But yet again, guess what's built right into the interface of the software? So the experience when your customers first get this capture solution is that not only when they install it are they going to get a step-by-step process working with our team, but when they first go to use it and they want to try this out, it has a step-by-step guide to take them through each action. And it even promotes them to do a couple of things. So it really does engage that administrator who on the customer side is going to be getting this for the first time and says, well, how complicated is it going to be for me to take this on? This sounds like a whole project. And the first answer is not only is it not a project, not only is it the easiest to use capture product on the market, but it comes with a full step-by-step guide to walk you through the entire experience. Not to say that we're not going to do that anyway, because that's one of the benefits of working with ecoprintQ. As y'all have experienced and done before, whether it not be with PaperCut or maybe it is with Umango, hopefully you've seen that the kind of support that you get for pre-sales as well as post-sales is the kind that you can leverage to win opportunities. That you can bring us in knowing that we have an understanding of the product and enough understanding of different customer environments to be able to walk through the conversation and help provide the information, to help provide the demo, and to help to do the discovery call to get that first quote done. Leverage your channel manager. In this case, most of y'all, it's going to be me. But if you have a different channel manager, leverage them to get these things done and win those opportunities. Now, without further ado, I want to go ahead and, with my first 10 minutes done, introduce Quentin. I call him Mr. Umango himself, or you could call him the wizard. He's actually one of the, I want to say, and Quentin, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the original founders and product development team members for Umango, but I don't want to give titles out there. I'll let you introduce yourself, and why don't you take it from there?
Well, thanks very much, Ross. It's great to be on the session today, and I really thank all of you for taking the time to be part of this. I appreciate the fact that your time is precious, and this is a reasonably long session today, so we're going to try and keep it moving, keep it interesting. And Ross, I am going to need you to just
stop sharing my screen, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Select me as presenter.
Okay.
I think you'll need to identify me as presenter.
I'm going to do that right now. Give me just a second. And you are now the presenter.
All righty, just getting organized here. Okay, excellent. And Ross, just confirm, you can see my screen?
I can, yeah, thank you for confirming.
It's always important to do because I've done presentations before and got 10 minutes in before someone told me they couldn't see my screen. So good to know, good to know. All right, so what we want to do today is just quickly move through Umango 20 I want to give you a bit of a feeling for how things look and feel, both in the browser and on the panel of the device. And we're going to jump through a couple of workflows, or as we call them, jobs, just to show you how things come together, how it looks and feels, and get a bit of a taste for some of the features that are in Umango. I'm going to try and keep this not too technical, but at the same time, we're going to jump in and show you very quickly how a job is configured. But before I do that, you'll see this screen in front of you now, which is what we call our dashboard. This is the screen you arrive at when you first log into Umango, and it's really to give you a bit of a snapshot of what's going on in Umango at any point in time, or at least an administrator a feeling for what's going on in Umango. The very first time you log into Umango, you'd be prompted to perhaps undertake a product tour, which is one of these things that Ross touched on a moment ago. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to kick off a product tour just to step through a few key things so we can become a little bit familiar with some Umango terminology and some screen layouts. So you'll see one of the first things we're prompted there is the create new jobs. So if we wanted to start a new job, we click on that. We can that's where we can launch our job wizards to just step through a very wizard-like process, and in a few clicks create a job and get it deployed perhaps to a device. But a job is what we call perhaps a document type, a job template, or a workflow, if you like, but really just a collection of business rules around what we do with a particular job type. So where's the documents coming from? What are we doing with the documents? What are we reading off them? And then where are we deploying the documents? Where are we sending them to after we've finished with them? They're all wrapped up in a job. We can manually import documents into Umango. Lots of ways of getting documents through to Umango, whether it be from an email source, scanned from an MFD, watched from a folder, scanned from a Twain desktop scanner, whatever it might be. One of them is through the import function, which we'll be using in just a moment. Our job services, they run in the background doing things like watching folders, network folders, watching email addresses and those kind of things. We can start and stop that service as we may need to. This is one of the little areas of the screen that tells us if things have gone wrong. Maybe for some reason Umango isn't able to send a document off to its destination. We would see those failures here. We could quickly click on this and drill through and find out why those files have failed and go ahead and correct them. And then you can see I've processed 25 files here today so far. Document processes, I can license processes that essentially increase the volume or the speed with which documents can be processed through Umango. So in environments where I'm processing or expected to be processing a large volume of documents, I can increase that volume throughput by licensing additional Umango processes. In this case, you can see I have 2 licensed. This is really eye candy, but it is just a snapshot of what's being processed through Umango in the last, I think it's 14 days. So different jobs on different days, which jobs are getting the volume, those kind of things, just so I can understand where the workflow is being conducted. We mentioned jobs, but this will list any jobs that we have in the system over here. Batches are a collection of documents that are processed through the system together. So if we're walking up to a device, using perhaps document separation, I put a pile of documents in the feeder at once and hit the scan button. All those documents will be processed through together in the same batch. And this is where I would see those batches in the system. My processing queue is a list of documents that are sitting waiting to be processed. And at any point, if we may be watching a folder or an email address or something, you'll see the files queued up in Umango. We can see what order they're going to be processed and what priority that they're being processed in. And finally, my history log. So if I'm wanting to see what's been going on at any point in time, I can select a date range and I can drill in using all sorts of search terms and those kind of things to get to the information I need, perhaps even uncover if things going wrong. I can search for errors and those kind of things as well. All right, so that's you're all full bottle on all the Umango terminology now, hopefully. And we can, perhaps what we might do to start today is we're going to import some files. And I'm going to select...
Quentin, real quick, just while we're on the subject, exit out just real quick, back up real quick to the last screen. So looking at this, you can see that there's a couple of different jobs that are set up as in those workflows where maybe we're scanning to a shared folder in one of them. Another example, the delivery dockets, maybe we're reading some kind of barcode, but these are examples of where they could have different workflows that are happening and they get a quick snapshot of, hey, here's how much end users are scanning to Excel. You know what? With this much kind of volume, maybe we should add more processing. And as that kind of comes into play, that's where we really kind of gauge what kind of power that we want to put into this, because it is very scalable. So it'll work for just the small mom and pop, someone who's just got the single one-off office, or even for the larger organization who has several workflows that they want to do and maybe see all of those happening at the same time. Just wanted to recap that, and thank you, Quinn.
That's good, Ross. And maybe I'll take this opportunity to say too, as we go through here today, if you do have any questions that maybe aren't covered, please feel free to hit the little raise your hand button and ask questions, and I'm sure Ross will be right onto that. In a similar vein, if you can't understand my strange Australian accent and you need some clarification, that would be the way to do it as well. Okay, so as I was saying, we're going to just import some documents to start with. We're going to process this through our delivery dockets job. You can see here it explains what that job does. It captures various details off a delivery docket and sends it off to a library in SharePoint 365. So the first thing I'm going to do is select the job type, and I'm going to drag and drop some files. Okay, so these could be coming from a watch folder, an email address, they could be scanned in. In this case, I'm just dropping 9 files into Umango, uploading them to the server, and they're off doing their thing. I wouldn't now have to do anything else. This particular job is configured to be fully automated. So as you can see, I'm off to get a coffee and have a little bit of a relax, or at least I would be, but I think I probably should continue with this presentation. So I'm going to close that screen now. And while that job is being processed through, you can see in our batches here, we have a batch of 9 documents and the capture process has started at 7%. While that's being processed through there, I'm going to jump across to that job. This is my delivery dockets job. This is the one that's being processed right now. And I'm going to step through and we'll have a bit of a look at how it's configured so we can understand what output we're expecting. So as I mentioned, we have our delivery dockets job. We can give that a nice name that explains to the user what the job's going to do. I'm going to move through these tabs reasonably quickly. I don't want to bore you with detail. So just forgive me if I jump over things. There is some intention in that to not get too detailed. So our job sources, as I mentioned, they can be coming from various different places. Devices would be one that is probably very dear to your heart. And by devices, we mean MFDs, or it could also be assigning an IP address, a computer on my network, where I want to be able to do importing of documents from, or maybe Twain scanning. I would assign those addresses as Umango sources. So you can see here, I have this particular IP address, which is actually this computer or the Umango server, if you like. But it could also be one of these other devices I've got on the network here. And getting this job onto the device is just as simple as point and click. When I save this job, Umango would automatically deploy to the devices without anything else for me to do. And in fact, if the app isn't installed, it will go ahead and install the app on the device, install the job. I could walk up to the device and start my scanning. Very, very simple. My source could also be an email address. So I would set up my POP information, and I can filter based on various different information within the incoming email. So I'm only capturing the files that I need, or the emails that I need.
So real quick, because the email is actually one we're going to cover later as a real life example, one that came in as a request, thinking about the fact that you can bring in emails, right? So let's just say you have a customer who is using a workflow for accounts payables, and they have an email that all of their customers or vendors send invoices to, and the vendors all send them to accountpayables@companyxyz.com. We could read that folder for the emails so that as they're coming in with the attached invoice, we're automatically processing them. Whereas the standard form of operation would be that the end user who monitors that emails themselves would manually process each document as it's brought in. So you could see where that kind of automation frees up the time for this individual to be able to do some other tasks that aren't just monitoring an email. That's kind of one of those things we like to call busy work. And let's give them something besides busy work to be more productive and something that would be more intuitive to the business versus just monitoring email, which to me would be kind of counterintuitive. And so thinking about some examples like that as to why the email piece is so important. Just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Ross. And similarly, watching a folder. So we can tell Umango, sit and watch this hot folder. When a file arrives that meets these rules, let's go ahead and process it. So that could be a network folder or a local folder, whatever it might need to be. I'm going to skip over users, but really that's just about assigning users or user groups to jobs, limiting access to jobs. Automation. So in this particular job, I've set this for full automation. So I don't want any user intervention. I'm just going to process this job through without anyone seeing anything. But I can set rules and in play that are going to mean there are going to be times when users may need to get involved. Maybe if some OCRing doesn't meet some confidence criteria, or maybe a captured value doesn't meet its structured rule, something like that, then I can bring a user in, prompt a user to get involved, and eyeball the value before it's saved off and exported. Similarly, I can set it to be fully manual, where a user must see every value before it's exported off to its destination as well. So lots of flexibility there for automation, and that's not only when done in the browser, but that automation level can also be at the panel of the device. So it means that we may have a job processing 10 documents, but the user may only need to validate 1 or 2 fields on the panel of the device because everything else is processed with a level of confidence that meets its preset criteria. So lots of flexibility there. I'm going to skip over indexes for now and jump straight into zones. So zones are how we go about doing our zonal OCR, capturing information that is in particular areas on the document. And in this particular job, I've captured 3 different pieces of information. I've captured our shipping number, which is actually a barcode. I'm reading a barcode off the file. I'm capturing the account number. I'll just zoom in there. So the account number is this sender's account number I'm reading off the document. And then finally, the company name. So I'm reading this KJJ Associates off the document as well. And you can see that this region or these regions that I've configured are somewhat larger than the constrained area that the text is in. And this is how we can use things like regular expressions and all sorts of clever things like that to be able to reliably lift off the document the exact information that we require. So I won't dig into that too far, but what I will do is just open one of these zones properties and step through some of the different types of values that we can capture off the document. So firstly, key from region. Now this would be an example of where a user is involved every time they need to see something on the document and they just have a free-form text field. They can type something in based on what they see, and that particular piece of metadata is used further down the line. Barcode, which is what I'm reading over here. OCR text, we were just talking about, reading text off the document in a certain region based on some rules. List of values, so have a user select from a predefined list, which is really good for doing things like categorizing documents, those kind of things, where you don't want a user being able to use their own naming logic. You want to fix that logic and lock it down with a list of values. Optical mark, so where we want to be able to identify if maybe a checkbox is checked or not, maybe a signature panel, does it have a signature on it? And then based on that, we set a rule. And so the value is X if it's true, or the value is Y if it's false, so on and so forth. Our ODBC data lookup. So maybe we want the user to be able to do a search in a back-end database while on the panel of the device or in a browser. We can do that using ODBC connectivity. And I won't bore you with that detail today, but it's very point and click in configuring, very quick and easy to connect to those back-end databases and enable users to have that search functionality right there on the panel of the device. And finally, our export field option. This enables us to connect to our destination connector. So in this case, we're outputting to SharePoint. So you can see, because our connector is SharePoint, I have some options here. I can have the user browse and select a SharePoint folder where the file is going to go to, or even a choice field within the SharePoint library to select a value based on what they see. So these export field values are going to be different and provide different options dependent upon the connector that's assigned to this particular job. Okay. I'm not going to go into these in any detail, but you can see we have the ability to format and validate values as well to ensure that they meet rules. I can do all sorts of clever things with Umango SmartSeek in using ways of capturing the exact information that we require, and I can even run scripts and those kind of things at the zone level to manipulate data and do all those kind of clever things as well. Okay, so if we've come away from that understanding that Umango can identify regions of documents and lift information with or without user intervention, if you've understood that concept, I'm doing my job, and I must be doing an awesome job. So pat on the back for me. moving right along into separation. So where we want to be able to scan lots of documents at one time, get the benefit of those high-speed scanners and high-speed MFDs, then we can set some rules around how we're going to go about separating. And it's not just as simple as perhaps a separation sheet, but we can use some of these zonal, some of the data we've read off the document using our capture zones for things like saying when we see a barcode in this region of the document that meets this particular rule, trigger a separation, or maybe when the barcode value changes or whatever it might need to be. Similarly with OCR, I can identify a region of the document where this word exists or this word that meets this rule, whatever it might need to be, trigger a separation. I can do a simple page count. I can even use automatic document recognition. So I say when you see a page that looks like the first page of my sample document, trigger a separation, and I can decide how sensitive I want that to be. I can do a similar thing with an anchor, which really just looks at one area of the document rather than the entire document itself. In this particular case, I'm going to be not separating. So each file is treated as a separate document. And filters. So how I might want to clean up my document, do some clever things like detect the orientation of the text and correct it. Maybe I want to remove blank pages. Deskew is a common one. Those kind of things. I can also do automatic redaction, and redaction isn't just limited to obscuring text that meets a certain rule, but we can also highlight text that meets a certain rule. And really how this works is we say, maybe I want to obscure a value. I enter a regular expression with our regex builder, and then when some text on the identified pages meets that rule, maybe it's a rule for the structure of a social security number, something like that, Umango goes ahead and redacts that or blocks out that text so that it can't be seen further down the line. Disable that. Okay, and finally, destination. So where do I want my files to go to when Umango has finished capturing everything and converting everything? Well, one of the great things about Umango 20 is we can have an unlimited number of destinations, which also means I can have an unlimited number of file formats on the output as well. So in this case, I'm just saying I want it to go to SharePoint, but it could be going to SharePoint, a network folder, an email address, off to Google Drive, wherever it might need to go, all in the one workflow. And each of those destinations could have a unique file format that they're wanting to send them off in. The file names can be different, everything can be different. Once again, I'm not going to go too deep into this, but I'm just going to quickly look at that SharePoint configuration. You can see I've identified a SharePoint site here. I've identified the library I want the documents to go into. And then I can set up column assignments as well. So I've lifted that company name, the shipping number, and the account number off the document. We were looking at that just a moment ago in our zones. But what I can then do is I can assign them to different Umango columns. Sorry, not Umango columns, SharePoint columns, and insert that data into SharePoint. We'll see that in action in just a moment. And then in addition, what SharePoint folder do I want it to go to? So I can preset this folder or have Umango build the folder based on metadata that's captured. Or I could assign this to one of those export field zones and have the user identify the folder in real time on the panel of a device where they want the document to go to. So a lot of flexibility there. And finally, my document name. So you can see I've got some structure here around the name. I'm going to name my file the company name, followed by the month, followed by the year. But I could name it literally anything in many, many different ways using lots of clever, what we call merge values to retrieve information or change information and do all those kind of things.
Real quick, actually, so just to kind of bring everything full circle there, because we just covered a lot. So you have the ability to do these zones. The zones can be configured to extract particular information, right? And we have a bunch of ways to do that. That particular information can then be used not only for the routing of the file, so which folder it's going to, maybe it's looking up to see what the name already is, does it exist, but also to then name the file. So we're extracting this information, using it to intelligently route the file, and then also to intelligently name the file. All of these things that end user typically has to do in a manual process as they're going through each step. I go over to the device, I scan it to me at my email, I rename it, I send it to here in SharePoint, and now it's in the folder it's supposed to be, which what if I selected the wrong folder, right? There's the end user error, concept of, what kind of error level do they see? And, and that's just at the end of the day, we're trying to eliminate the user error concept, how much of it there would be, and automate a lot of that process so that when they drop the document, they don't scan it to their email, they don't rename it, they don't then pick the folder to go to. They automate that process as much as they can. And so that's just to kind of bring full circle what Quentin so far has shown you. And yeah, great job so far on everything, Quentin. Keep going.
Actually, while we're on that, let's just have a look. Any of these fields here that have the little blue dots around them, they are what we call merge fields. So merge fields are incredibly flexible, and I can pull metadata from lots of different locations in any of the merge fields. And I don't have to do that in any complicated way. I can just start typing what I want. Let's say I want the month. I start typing month, and Umango immediately says, well, do you want the current month as a number? Do you want the current month as the word December? Do you want the current month as an abbreviation, December? Or I could select one of these and then go, actually, I want to manipulate this, and I can restructure how that appears as well. But I'm not just limited to that. I say, oh, there's one of those zones I want. Oh, there's the company name zone. That's what I want. So this information is very quickly and very readily available. And if I don't want to search for it in that way, I can double click the field and I can browse through all the different types of metadata that I can have access to within Umango, including things like reading XML fields, reading LDAP information, going and looking up an Active Directory and retrieving properties based on the username, all sorts of clever things like that within Umango right there. Okay, we're going to jump across quickly to the file type options. And in this case, I'm outputting to a PDF file, an image only PDF file, but it could be one of many different file formats that Umango supports, including, of course, the Office formats, Excel, even OpenOffice, but also the Word format. So these are fully editable documents. And if you've had a bit of a play with Umango, you would know that those documents are well structured. They're not some random messed up structure. Umango does a great job. In fact, it employs the ABI engine to do its OCRing and file structure retention. Does a very good job. Your customers will be happy at the performance of that. So in this case, I'm using the PDF file format, which gives extra options. It gives me the metadata option. So I can embed in the PDF document property values that Umango is able to read off the document. So in this case, I've just named one of the properties within the PDF document company, and I'm inserting the company name into the PDF file itself. So that metadata will follow the PDF file wherever it might go, something that's reasonably unique in our space. Lots of conformance options there with PDFA types to meet all your conformance needs. We can even encrypt files using different encryption algorithms with passwords, once again, are mergeable, those kind of things as well. Okay. So very broad brush, that's kind of how we can set up a job. I've gone into a little bit of detail there. Hopefully none of you have fallen asleep. That would be unfortunate. I'm going to back out of this job now. So I'm going to cancel so I don't save any of those options that I've played around with. And you'll see that the job that we were, the batch that we were processing before is complete, it's gone. Let's jump across to SharePoint now. And oh, look, about a minute ago, I think it was a little bit longer than that, but about a minute ago, we created a bunch of folders in here. And let's just have a look at one of these. Come on, SharePoint. You can see we've named our file based on our rules. So Car Parts Inc., we lifted off the document. We said we wanted to name it the month and the year. So there you can see we've automatically done that, but we've also placed into the metadata columns within SharePoint the company name, the shipping number that we lifted off the document, and the account number that we lifted off the document. So Umango has, in a very automated way, taken a bunch of documents, I think it was 9, read the information, processed them through, created folders in SharePoint, populated metadata within the PDF itself, and named the file based on that as well in a fully automated way with no user intervention. But let's imagine for a moment that we had that same job, but we did want users a little bit involved. So I have a copy of that job here. You can see I've very creatively called it manual, meaning that this is a manual version of it. So it won't automatically process. We're going to get a user involved. So let's see what that job might look like if it was set to manual and processed on the panel of the device. So if you can imagine for a moment that this is the panel of a device, the Umango embedded looks almost identical to what you see here. And we walk up to the device, we launch the Umango app, this is what we would see. These 4 buttons here are 4 different jobs that we've assigned to our device. I would select one of them, in this case, delivery dockets. I'd put my documents in the feeder, I'd hit the scan button, but because I'm demonstrating this in a browser, I have a select files button instead. So I'm going to hit the select files and let's populate 3 of these dockets. I'll drop them in. Umango grabs those files, uploads them to the server, does a little bit of pre-processing. And I've got this configured so that the user is prompted with the region of the document and the value for the user to validate. So you can see in this case, we're reading this barcode. So I'm getting a snapshot of the region of the document with the value that's been read off the document. Nice and easy for the user to validate in real time. And of course I could click in here and edit that if I need to, but in this case it's correct. I just hit the next button. As you can see, this layout of this screen is incredibly simple. It's like designed for idiots. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 buttons to select from. You kind of can't get it wrong, which we all like simple. It's what we would call zero learning. Okay, so in this case, we're reading our account number off the document. We've highlighted what we read. The user validates. We move on to the next field. I think our final one was the company name, if I remember correctly. Moving on to the next field. Come on, Umango. Watch pot never boils, I think they say, don't they? Is that right? Okay, so you can see in this case, we've read this value off the document, and Umango is identifying that it's a lower confidence level, just so the user is perhaps highlighted that. I could set a rule around that and ensure that a user has to see it based on that confidence level if I needed to. But in this case, it has in fact read it correctly. But at this point, I might be going, you know what, I'm a little bit tired of doing this at the device. I might do this back at my desk. I can hit this button, defer batch. So let's do that. I'm going to defer this batch now. We jump back to the menu. I could then sign out or close the app at the device, go back to my desk. So let's virtually go back to our desk here. And I have a batch in the system here, which is the batch we've started that is now 33% complete. The owner, Quentin, which just so happens to be me, is identified as the owner of the batch, and I can jump in and continue processing. So let's do that. So I'm now sitting back at my desk, and you'll see this process is very much the same, but I have some added features and functionality here because I've got a little bit more screen real estate to work with. So you can see the 3 different values that I've captured. I'm now on my second document, and on the shipment number, I'm highlighting the barcode value again, pre-populated the value. And that one looks correct, so I'm going to move on. And on to my next field, which is my account number. There it is, captured beautifully. I also have available to me here a bunch of extra features and functionality. I can real-time skew the document, remove borders, punch holes, rotate. I could even delete this document if I need. I'd delete this page if I needed to out of the document. And then I've got document options as well. I could delete the document. I could split it here. So let's say I had a multi-page document and the separation I wanted to do manually. I can manually split here as well. I can even reassign this document to a different workflow type or job type if I needed to. So lots of features and functionality. And I move on. And you can see I would just step through field for field and validate and correct information as I go. I'm not going to step right through this. This particular job, as we know, steps off to, sends the file off to SharePoint. And I think we know what that looks like. So I could defer this batch, or I can cancel it. In this case, I'm just going to cancel that batch. I don't need it for the purposes of what I'm doing. Okay, so you can see how that process basically works. I'm going to just quickly jump into this this job here that I have once again very creatively called lookup examples, which is a name
real
you
quick,
would.
just to recap, Quentin, because again, a lot happening in a short period of time, and just to kind of recap for everybody. So what we were able to do there, and he was just kind of clicking through how he had already had it set up so that some of our technical folks can kind of get an idea of where we're pulling this information from. But to dumb it down, we're pulling information off the document. We're using the zonal OCRs. We're naming the folder, naming the file, but then also adding in that metadata layer so that when you have that customer who is using a SharePoint document management system and they want to keep everything in there, it's really important to be able to say that you can do more than just subfolder navigation. This isn't just subfolder navigation when scanning into their SharePoint site. This is the ability to scan into their SharePoint site by with capturing intelligent data to pass along. So if there's a certain file format structure that they're looking to have within their SharePoint site, file folders are supposed to be named this, files are supposed to be named that, and they're supposed to go to these places so that anyone in the company that needs to go find them can go and find them. That's kind of the idea of using the document management system, right? So leveraging Umango allows you to better leverage your scanned documents within SharePoint without having to manually create those folders and name those files and everything else that they would then have to do. So just keeping that in mind. And thank you for giving me that second, Quentin.
It's no problem. And you raise a good point. I mean, when selling solutions like capture solutions to end users, it is all about efficiency, return on investment, and all those kind of things. And the beauty of a product like Umango is that the argument for return on investment in relation to increased or improved efficiency is off the scale. In fact, if you present the math on return on investment, it's almost an embarrassing number to present. It's like the return on investment will come back to you by lunchtime tomorrow. It's very, very, in many organizations where there's a high level of user intervention with document processing, the return on investment is too easy to sell. Okay, so I wanted to show you just some of the more unusual things that Umango is capable of doing that creates a level of flexibility that is kind of off the charts. And some things that you may not otherwise have thought you could do with a capture solution in a traditional sense. So I've got a few fields set up here using different types of capture. This particular one we have set up to do translation. So this field, I've told Umango, have the user type something in, translate it to another language, and save that value into the metadata field. So maybe you have staff doing processing that don't speak the language that you need files to be named in, something like that. No problem, you could have Umango do that. The way it does it, for those more technical among us, in this case, I'm using Umango's web service connector, and we're doing a lookup into the Google web service, the Google Translate web service, and just returning a different value. Very, very simple. And it's all point and click, no scripting or anything required. Similarly with address, maybe we've got a user that needs to enter a company name address based on what they see, but we need to validate that address. Well, we can do that as well. And finally, company name. So in this particular case, I'm actually looking up a company name in a little database that I have set up here and having the user search that and retrieve a value. So it could be retrieving it from a back-end system to confirm the company name is correct. And finally, I'm having the user enter a recipient email address or a list of recipient email addresses, and we'll see in just a moment as to what happens here. So I'm going to jump back out of here. Let's just process this batch through quickly. I hit the import button again, and we go to our, once again, creatively named lookup examples. I know you're impressed. And I'm going to drop in here the Umango brochure, process that file, and you can see, we just wait for a moment, you'll see Umango will prompt us to process that batch. Oh, look at that, fancy that. So I hit process, and I jump straight in, and I'm prompted for, firstly, my translate. So I'll jump in, I can do a search. I think this would be a good thing to translate. I must sell more Umango. Ross is saying this in his sleep at the moment. So
sleep, wake, all in between.
That's all good. Okay, so you can see here it's translated across to Spanish. I select the value, that's correct, and it saves off that Spanish value. Similarly, address. So I might want to type an address here, maybe Smith Street might be one I'm going to get a few results on. Okay, so which Smith Street is it? Once again, this is using Google's address, I can't think what it's called now, but their address engine, just to validate street addresses. Select that, that's now correct, save that off. And finally, company name. So let's look up a company name. And I think I've got Apple in here somewhere. Apple, there you go. So very, very quick and easy to build these lookups. It is all point and click. Once again, you don't need any scripting knowledge. In most instances, users that are reasonably untechnical would be able to configure these kind of lookups. I'll save that one. Finally, I'm prompted for an email recipient, and here's a couple I prepared earlier. So I'm just going to copy and paste in. Genevieve and Sunny, if you're on the line, I hope you don't mind, you're going to get some emails in the next little while. So I'm identifying a couple of people to be the email recipients for this particular job. I hit the save button, and ooh, what do you know? I'm prompted to the fact that I've completed this particular batch. Do I want to export it? I hit yes, and Umango heads off, and it's actually now converting those documents and sending them off to their respective users for them to have a little look at and play with later. Finally, I just have one more thing to show, and that is our job wizards that Ross was talking about earlier. So you can see here, when I go to create a new job, I can create a job with all the bells and whistles, or I can use one of our simple wizards. So I'm going to just jump in here with the simple job wizard. And let's just see how easy it is to set up a job to scan documents to a particular format and push it off to a device. So I'm going to call this scan to Word. Let's call it that. I could give it a description if I wanted to, all those kind of clever things, but I'm just going to do the basics here. Which device do I want it on? I'm going to put it onto my Ricoh device, and I might put it on the Xerox device as well. And go next. Yeah, I'm going to use Umango separation sheets for these documents. And where do I want the documents to go to? I'm going to output them to a network folder. Let's configure that quickly. Let's just put it in C drive temp. That's a very creative name. I could use some metadata to create subfolders if I need to, but I'm not going to. And I'm going to call this, let's call it, let's just name it the date, shall we? My file type, I think we said we're going to create a Word document. I'm going to use the Abby engine, and let's make it nice and accurate. Save. I hit finish. Bang, done. That job is now on the device, ready for me to start scanning. How quick and easy was that? For those of you that are familiar with setting up Scan to SMB on, I think, just about every brand of multifunction device, you need to set time aside in your diaries to do that. Typically, it's a reasonably time-consuming and painful process. But that's how quick it is to get a job deployed to a device, ready to start scanning to a folder in Umango using a Umango wizard. Ross, I've done lots of talking. I know everyone's sick of my dulcet tones, so I'm going to throw back to you and let you weave your magic.
I don't know. The sweet, sultry voice is it's doing
Yeah,
justice.
not so sure about that. But anyway, I'm going
The
to take the
Australian
compliment.
accent is what does it for you.
Let's
No,
do it,
very
my
good.
friend.
That is fantastic because that is a lot, and we didn't want to be too technical, but we did want to kind of show that all of this capability is in there, right? So now let's kind of back up for a second and talk about when we're, putting into our sales environment. Let me make sure I'm sharing the right screen, and bingo. Okay, so hopefully we're looking back on the PowerPoint.
Yes, we are, Ross.
All right, very good. So we've talked a lot about it, and let's kind of, cover what that means at the device level. So we mentioned that, yes, you could walk up to the device once he pushed out those workflows, like that most recent example. Right now, when I walk up to that device, I could walk up and we would see scan to Word, and I could easily scan to that Word folder. We could also set it up so that when end users are walking up, it doesn't just go to one folder that all users would need access to, but we could also set it up that it's a folder based on the end user who logged in. And we're going to talk about how this kind of works with a PaperCut environment. Now, this does include the capability to have that real-time validation on the panel. This is what you were just seeing a minute ago. So we have the different sources, right? A source can be the MFD. A source could be that email watch folder. Another source can be the hot folder, for example. When thinking about what type of source to use or what they mean, it's just really a matter of, well, what is it that the customer is trying to accomplish, and what's the simplest and most cost-effective way to do so? So if you have one device and they need many workflows, like you're seeing on my screen here, maybe it makes more sense to have it on the MFD as the source. Or what about the flip side? They have 10 MFDs, but they want to do one action. I think the hot folder makes more sense because we can route all 10 MFDs plus other scanning devices to that hot folder and leverage that one workflow. So really, really good, and just a great time to think about when we're talking about sources. They are different, but when you do it at the touchscreen panel, the MFD, it's really, really where you get the richest experience for the entirety of the Umango software, because that's where you get most of the touch and feel for the end user who's actually going to be validating all the information. So the real-time validation, whether it be reading the barcode or specific information like an invoice number, or we could be reading off of a statement, maybe it's the company name, right? And he did mention that while validating at the MFD is a great way to do it, if they wanted to defer, maybe they're up there, they dropped a batch of, who knows, 100 different documents. With the 100 documents they're dropping in, they could have to maybe process something. Maybe it's part of their role to make sure these old documents are processed and they're archived, and we're just doing drop-down selections of the type of document it is. Well, they could defer that batch, grab their tablet, use the Umango app to then validate, and do so at lunch, versus if they stand at the copier, maybe someone walks up behind them and like, hey, I'd like to scan. No worries. They just walk up, hit defer batch, and they can do so at their tablet while sitting at their desk, or even sitting at lunch and kind of doing their thing there. So really flexible in the capabilities of what PaperCut can do. Now, I'm not going to go through validation on the panel because the beauty is, well, we had the wizard himself do it for us. When it comes to a nice video that you could show your customers, we do have a great YouTube video and some great resources outside of just this recording today, but I will provide you guys with this presentation so that you can kind of use that and leverage some of the great information as well. Not here to just present it for you, but to help provide it to you so that you can provide to your customers. Now, fun stuff. Everybody here is used to PaperCut, and PaperCut's got the integrated scanning capability. So how does Umango play into a PaperCut environment? Well, if they're walking up and using their HID badge card, maybe they're walking up and using a PIN code, whatever their authentication method is, we know who that end user is, and they could have limited access to certain scan actions based on user credentials, right? Same kind of thing we're always used to with PaperCut. But now, when they walk up to the device, they badge in. Of course, they're going to hit scan in this example. They may see some new options. Now, the new options don't have a different look to the icon or anything else, but it includes this ability to also, describe what is happening. We could add a scan to Excel. Maybe this finance folder here is actually a Umango action that's happening. The scan to HR folder could be in a Umango action that's happening, and it's all happening in the background. The end user is able to process the documents just as simply and easily as they used to, with automated processing happening on the back end, kind of everything Quentin was showing you, right? All of this stuff can be happening on the back end to then automate it. And whatever you want to name that action is what you name it. If it's just a simple file conversion, right? We just want to get an output of Excel and I want it to go to my email. Well, we would just call it scan to Excel, and we'd make sure that it's routed based on the end user credentials using XML data to route it to their email address. So Umango doesn't even need them to log in to Umango. It's one-time authentication. Umango leverages the information PaperCut passes through, and it processes the document based on that. So I could see scan to Excel, scan to Word, scan to Umango here, and then another person walks up and maybe they see different scan actions, scan workflows that are pushed out to them and made available. So really great way to increase your capabilities of PaperCut. If someone comes to you and says, you know what, I'm using, PaperCut, we have the cloud OCR, we would really like to be able to do a little more when it comes to scanning. Automatically, you should be thinking of Umango. And that's because we can fill in any of the gaps that are needed. We want to automate processing, we want a certain file format, we want to automate where it's delivered to. And whereas PaperCut has a scan to SharePoint, if you've ever set it up, you'll know that the scan to SharePoint is simply we can scan to a folder named scans that resides underneath the end user's SharePoint site. So it'd be specific to the end user, but it only simply allows us to scan to a scans folder. No subfolder navigation, no automatic folder naming, file naming. Well, file naming we can do, but no folder naming or routing outside of that scans folder. So if they start to say, hey, you can scan to SharePoint, I see PaperCut has a connector, I'd like to be able to do a little more. Umango, right? That's what you should think about. And the way it works is that the documents are scanning at the device, and the device is simply routing to a Umango hot folder that then outputs to wherever it needs to go. So it could be a shared folder destination, Gmail, Outlook, SharePoint, Dropbox, Drive, you name it. We're just showing a few of the many varieties that are out there. And these could be document management systems or just cloud hosted systems or on-prem. And Umango is able to effectively route it and get us there. Now with who's buying Umango and what's going on with all of this market space, there's a lot of verticals that you can play into as well as horizontals. You have education who's out there looking to convert file formats. You've got legal, corporates. I've actually got a few of these real life examples that I've put together based on some recent wins that we've had and wanted to provide those to just kind of say, hey, look, here's some real life examples of some customers without names, of course, to be able to say, hey, look, this is what they wanted and here's what we did and here's how simple it is. But as you can tell, based on this list, any number of customers are going to be a good opportunity. And some are more particular, like I would say education 9 times out of 10, education is more particular to just want to converting file formats and where it goes, right? Maybe it's an email or folder. Legal, they want to look up a client matter number and then scan to their backend system, right? They have a legal backend system that they keep all of their documents in. Corporates, we talked about SharePoint, reading barcodes for logistics, transportation logistics, medical, a really big field for all of my resellers. You all know medical is a big play this year. And so really good to see that Umango can help increase our scanning capabilities there. The accounts payables, building constructions, let's talk about that. But I think the big benefit here, and for those of us who have recently signed up or are thinking about it, is that with all these opportunities for end users that could use Umango, that's where you come into play. So we don't sell direct. Umango is not sold direct. We work through the OEM and the dealer market, which this is where you guys come in. And although the OEMs, yes, they have accessibility and have the availability to sell Umango, they typically go with high-end, cumbersome, expensive products that they can sell a lot of professional services on and really just try to drive their margins and their profit ratios. So to be able to say that Umango is really relying on the dealer, which is you guys, to then work with the customer and to have us your authorized distributor right here, ecoprintQ, as your authorized distributor, is going to do the pre-sale support, post-sale support, and make sure that you have everything you need to win these opportunities and to also see them go successfully. Now, Umango is lined up in product tiers. This is kind of new to the way Umango's done things. So if you've sold it in the past, this part may be a little bit new for you. And that is that we have a tier feature matrix, simply meaning that there's an essentials, standard, and pro product. And depending on what they may want to do, may help you decide which product you would use. But no worries, we've broken this out for you with some examples and also, of course, pricing. So with the new pricing, it really is set up so that you could package this then to any and every deal. And what I would like to see, and of course I would hope, and whether or not it actually makes sense for your business, is that you start to try to package it in on a basic level into all deals, especially with essentials starting at $245 per source. And remember, that could be an MFD, that could also be a hot folder, it could be any number of the different sources we talked about, the email and all that good stuff. And then we have standard at just $5.95 per source. And with essentials, you really are looking at something great for file format conversion. Maybe they have one device and this is a smaller office and we just want to be able to scan to Excel and just send it to this folder over here, because we get so many invoices and things that we'd like to be able to manipulate and make changes to. And it would really help us if we could scan to Excel. And bingo, that's a perfect example. Or what if you want to do zonal OCR? And you want to have that validation at the MFD, that rich experience we talked about earlier. Well, absolutely, we can start that at $5.95 per source. But as soon as you get into those opportunities where there's more than just a few devices and they're wanting to do this maybe for an entire school, a school district, or maybe it's going to be for a legal customer with a couple of offices or even just a couple of machines, I almost always say start at the professional. And the reason is because you get more processing power. So as soon as you say to yourself, they do a decent amount of volume, there's definitely going to be 10 plus users that want to leverage this capability, then you would definitely want to jump up to professional to have that extra processing power. And also because you then get all the other great features that's included, and you don't even have to worry about what was included in this tier matrix because professional includes everything. So really good stuff, really simple. And of course, we do have bulk pricing for the sources. So the more MFDs you want to put this on, the more hot folders you need to set up, workflows, that kind of thing, of course, the pricing does go down. Let's talk about some examples. Right, the first example of file format conversion on a single device. You're selling them an MFD and you're on a competitive deal, and you've got this other dealer who's coming in and trying to sell them on the world, and we'll do this, that, and the other. You could easily package in Umango here for a couple of dollars a month, breaking it down, whatever 724 works out for your lease rate. But if you put this in on a 5-year deal, we're talking about dollars per month for them to have some file format conversion and for you to help stand out yourself, right? We talk about standing out amongst the masses and how we're going to be able to beat out the competition and even just to sell more boxes. If the whole point of you putting in Umango is to sell the copier, that's perfectly fine. Because at the end of the day, if they don't really use it that much, that's fine, but at least you won the opportunity based on what you could do and what you provide for your customer. All of my resellers know that I preach, you want to be a technology vendor, or a technology partner and not a copier vendor. A copier vendor asks, how happy are you with your copier contract? When is it up? And would you be willing to change, right? So that they can rate them as a lead. And that's great if you just want to do the typical box sales, but to increase your sales, what I'm thinking would help is to help differentiate yourself by adding in something like Umango. And for a couple of dollars a month, if you're adding in a feature that solves problems, they won't care if you're a few dollars more, and you can get away from that pennies and dollars battle. Right? Let's get away from I'm $10 a month more or $10 a month less, and let's get into what are we doing for you as your technology partner, Mr. Customer, and what information are we providing for you to then know other things you could do as a business to help make it more efficient. And trust me, with things that are going on right now, the conversion to cloud, right? All these companies suddenly had to have everyone working from home, and now they're all working with cloud or wishing they were working with cloud beforehand, and they are trying to scan everything in. to have it there, or they're converting it from a digital format. Think about the drag and drop feature Umango has. All right, so all of that plays in. Standards starting at the $5.95 per source. These are examples with your install services from ecoprintQ to have us even help out with it. Zonal OCR with validation at the MFD. Again, maybe this is just 1 or 2 devices that they're going to be processing, maybe 3, 4. But if we get up past 5, you know what I'm going to recommend, and that's professional. And that's because of the additional processing power and, of course, all of the other added benefits and features. So there's a couple of examples of how you could go into a deal. Now think about this, professional, if they did have 10 copiers, and you're providing this, and maybe you're using the hot folder. So we only need the one source, right, to be able to process these jobs. At $285 per device, right, divided by 10, you're again talking a couple of dollars per month per device to add some real value to help you stand out and close more business, which is definitely going to be important right now. So without further ado, let's go through a couple of real life examples. We've got education, got legal, finance, industrial, all that great stuff. So example number 1, education, customer request, file conversion and routing. We want to be able to scan at the MFD using PaperCut. That's what's in parentheses there. They're using PaperCut and want to be scanning at the MFD and want it converted to Excel or Word. This is a real life example that actually a few of my attendees today are probably very familiar with because we're going through the install. And one of the nice things there is that we're able to plug in Umango so that they can convert those documents not only at the MFD, which you're seeing here, but there's a reason why I included the Twain scanner and or these folders is where they're not using a network scanner, they're using a drag and drop from another folder to then process it. The fact that we're using a hot folder to get the job done going through PaperCut means that we can use more than one source. So not only could they do it at that MFD, they could do it at other MFDs that are using PaperCut, they could do it at other network scanners that have access to that folder, a Twain scanner that has access to that folder, and or of course, they could actually drag and drop the documents that they want to convert to Excel or Word. For a school who's looking at being able to do this, you're providing a lot of solution. They only asked for doing it at MFD, now they can do it at all sources, or I mean at multiple source types. They want to be able to scan to Excel or Word and receive it via email. So they got it in, and of course we could do Gmail or Outlook. I think in this example it's Outlook, but no worries. It wouldn't matter what the email platform is. We can output it to that email so that they get the right file format and they just select it. So when they go up to their device, they log in and then they go to PaperCut scanning and they see their actions and they see 2 new options. Those 2 new options are, one says scan to Word, the other says scan to Excel. And when they hit it, they get an output. We're actually still in the middle of that one, but it's a great example of a simple request that you say, well, PaperCut can't do that, so what do? We plug and play with Umango. And with 10 devices and breaking it down on a Pro Series license to add that processing power, you're talking $290 per device. Yeah, it really breaks down. It's really great stuff. What about file conversion and routing? What about this example for legal? So in this case, it's again going to be an Excel file. They also wanted to be able to do other file formats, but I just took one of their workflows that they had done. And what they wanted to do is say, hey, I want to scan at any device. So they wanted to be, actually, this is incorrect. It was at the MFD. They wanted it to convert to Excel, but in this case, they're looking up the matter ID for the client. So we're all familiar with the legal space and having worked with them. They have matter ID numbers, what you call client numbers. And that matter ID number may reside within their backend system, right? In this case, we have Clio. And so we can not only do a lookup to make sure they're pulling in the right matter ID, not just free typing or free filling it in at the touchscreen panel, but instead we're doing a real live backend database lookup. They look up the matter ID number, they select the correct one, all that great stuff, and then they're able to scan it to their legal CRM. In this case, it was Clio. But there's a bunch of them out there. So there's a great example for legal. Okay, going right along. What about finance, AP? Now this is horizontal because the nice thing here is this would apply to just about any, really any industry out there, any vertical you can think of, has a need to be able to process their invoices. And so what they wanted to do in this particular case is to be able to monitor an email address and or scan at the MFD. So if they received it by mail, right? They have a client that just happens to be old school, mails these things. They would scan it in at the MFD. They'd see a nice touchscreen button and do all that great stuff, validation there. The other way would be that they get it via the email. We talked about this earlier. It's ap@companyxyz.com, and then it automatically processes there. If there's any deferred batches, or what I really should say, batches that require validation. Maybe there's something that couldn't be read. Out of the 80 invoices it got today, 2 of them had coffee stains or something on them that when this customer sent it in, it just, was no good, or vendor, or whatever you want to say. So it processes all of those. They can do the validation back at their computer. Maybe it's the administrator who's over the AP department, finance department, and then it automatically routes those to a specific shared folder destination that they can go back and retrieve. And of course, it is in a OCR searchable format, so that if they don't remember what folder they put it in, no worries. They just do a keyword search and they pull it right up. So that's a long-winded one, but you could see there where having this ability to monitor both email and be able to do it at the device, any company who's receiving invoices could automate that process. And even if they still get the old school manual mail send an invoice, they're able to process it at the MFD. And if we use a hot folder instead of the MFD, and maybe they have a fleet of devices, we could add that workflow to the entire fleet and use 2 sources, one for email, one for hot folder. So another great example there. In commercial, this is actually one of my favorite ones. We worked with this end user. Starting off, it was really a basic request. They actually were using PaperCut scanning, but they found that the format outputs didn't give them a good quality TIFF image file that they could use to read the barcode. And for whatever reason, between DPI settings and all this stuff, the barcode was unable to be read by their backend system. So the way it started was, hey, can you convert this file, clean it up, and make it so that our system can read it? And sure enough, it turns out it wasn't really necessarily just PaperCut, but that system's really old. And the barcode scanning feature within it, very old. But it's their document management system. They weren't ready to replace it, so we needed a solution. And that solution came in the form of Umango. So it started off, hey, clean up the image, make it so we can read the barcode, and route it to this folder here where we can grab it and read the barcodes. Okay, great. Well, over time, the same customer came back to us about a year later, and they said, hey, you know what? Umango is really good at what it does, and I see that we have all these other features. I haven't really played with them too much, but I always see that it can read barcodes. Why isn't that we couldn't just have Umango read the barcode instead of me waiting for my backend system to do it? Well, actually, we could do that, and we can do it with a custom API. So what we ended up doing for this customer is they said, hey, we've got this Eclipse system, and we want it to be able to process this document. Our Eclipse system has a barcode reader, but it kind of sucks. So could you do it and then just automate, help if I can talk, and then automate the routing to where it goes within Eclipse based on the barcode? And that's exactly what we started doing. So we talked to the customer, we let them know that this would be a custom, API integration because one did not exist for this CRM. It's an older one, it's very vertical specific to this one type company. And you know what? They liked the idea. And so they actually paid for a custom API to be created. And I think that's an example of where even a reseller could be surprised. Even you yourself could be surprised of what the customer may come back to you and ask. You start off with something very simple. You get in on an introductory level, but because Umango is so easy to use, they have these wizards to walk them through step by step. They start wanting to do more. They come back to you and they say, hey, could Umango do this? And this is a great example where the answer was, of course, yes, almost always is when it comes to integration. Sometimes just a custom API, which we would bill for, and customers oftentimes are very okay with that because they really want it and see the value. So definitely not only a great way to stand out when you're in a competitive deal, but I think in this case, that's definitely a situation where this reseller is very sticky in that account. Good luck coming in and removing them when they have a custom API integration for their software that they didn't want to replace when they first replaced the copier. So really good stuff. So those are our real life examples. Those are hopefully pretty straightforward and easy to kind of understand. We do have the multiple tiers. Let's recap some of the great benefits of Umango. So to recap, easy to install, configure, and use. I know some of the stuff probably looked a little complicated just from the sense of you've never seen it before, but for anyone who's done a capture solution, it really is the simplest and easiest to use, and thus, for me, the easiest to sell on the market, right? Because if we can set this up in 5 minutes, like we showed you a minute ago, or even on a more complicated setup, do it in a few hours, you're really talking about a straightforward sale that doesn't slow down your process. I know a lot of sales reps will come back to the software specialist and be like, I'd love to sell that, but it slows down my sales cycle. The MFD, embedded application, and this is something that takes a brand agnostic approach. So we work with multiple device types, just like PaperCut, and then we have that integration with PaperCut. So even if they happen to be using a device type that we don't support for some reason, maybe it's just something off market, whatever, we could always use that hot folder method and we could integrate that way. And for customers that are using PaperCut today and starting to get used to that OCR, which we've only had around for a year, keep in mind that anytime they come back to you asking for more, you should be thinking about Umango, especially at the price point. Twain scanning in the browser, being able to process the documents real time while scanning, sitting at your desk. The flexible integrations, that custom API that we just reviewed, I think is the best example, because if the integration doesn't exist, we can create it. And of course, we can validate on the panel, in a browser, or in a tablet, and great product support. And for most of you on the call, I would like to say that you'd be quick to say ecoprintQ is great about their support, what we can do for PaperCut, what we can do for Umango. And if you've only seen one or the other, hopefully you know that that support will transition right over. For everyone who has been on this call and taking the time that's already decided to sign up to become a Umango dealer, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And I couldn't do this without you. For those who are still considering, it is as simple as a reseller application and credit app. There's no minimums or requirements. It's just like PaperCut, right? You sign up, and the idea really here is it's a mutually beneficial relationship where we're here to do all we can to help you close more business. It still is about you as the reseller, your offering to your customers, your relationship with your customers, and how we can do a good job of supporting that. Plus, of course, it's a key difference maker in your competitive offerings. Because I will say this, in being unique, I promise that when you work with your customers and you say, hey, I'd love to introduce you to Umango, they're going to ask, what's Umango? And did you say mango? And it does change the conversation, which I think is great. Change it up, switch it up. Let's make it fun. Let's make it interesting, and get me involved as much as you can. And I'm happy to do so. Which, speaking of which, and getting me involved, for those of you who are signing up or have done so recently, let's make sure we have these next steps covered. And I'd like to work with each one of you and my onboarding team to make sure we have your NFR showroom set up, right, with your license and everything else ready to go. So that way you get more hands-on experience and all that great stuff. And then let's do the sales training for the entire team. Hopefully you were able to get some of those team members on today's call, but eventually I am going to hopefully be back out into the field. Maybe it's this time next year, maybe sooner, who knows with today's actual environment and how things are going with COVID. But once we do have the NFR showroom set up, we're doing a little bit more in-person interaction. It'd be great to be able to come out and visit each one of you personally, but then in the meantime, we'll do our webinar trainings and do so for the entire team, but using an environment that's set up so they can drop some documents in and see that scan workflow go. Maybe we make something that makes sense, like, hey, here's a workflow to scan your signed contracts as a sales rep. And one copy goes to your sales manager, one copy goes to your email, and another copy goes to AP, right? Help make it make sense for you and for them. And I promise you, as a sales rep, if you do something like that, where you take something that you do every day and you make it into a workflow, it will transition into what you can do for your customers. Absolutely. Of course, we got co-branded marketing material. I want to apologize. We've been on a delay for getting that out with the new 20 version. Our marketing team's working very hard to create all new material to then have co-branded with your logos and your stuff. So just a heads up there. And then, of course, now that we've got the sales team set up, we've got the NFR set up in the showroom, now it's time to really get into some good technical training, maybe getting more level 2, spending all the time digging into each one of those feature assets that we talked about today. And of course, customer presentations, which no need to wait there. If you have anything in mind, maybe the customer that you want to present to, and even if you're not a Umango reseller today, do not hesitate to get me involved. I am happy to help no matter what. All right, with that, we've got about 9 minutes for questions. Anybody who wants to enjoy the last couple minutes of this hour, please do so. And we can't thank you and appreciate you enough. Please raise your hand or submit your question into the chat. And yeah, I look forward to speaking with each and every one of you individually and moving forward on this. Quentin, also, thank you very much, sir, for all of your presentation, all that great stuff. All right, Genevieve, let's unmark yours. Oops. I think you can unmute yourself now, but I'm going to try to unmute it. If you want to try, Genevieve. Here we go. Haha, we figured it out. Look at that.
Ross.
Hello, Genevieve.
No, it's all good. It's all good. So in addition to SharePoint, I guess we can talk offline in terms of what it can scan into. In addition to SharePoint, Mac support, we really didn't talk about that at all, but is that there?
Absolutely. So whether or not it be Windows platform, Mac platform, Quentin, do you want to add a little tidbit to that? Are you able to unmute yourself, sir?
Yeah, so let me just put a little bit more shape to that. So certainly, because Umango at the client level functions within a browser, it's not fussy as to what the client is, whether it be Linux or Apple or Windows or whatever. On the server side, at the present time, it does need to be a Windows-based server. It doesn't need to be server OS. It can be just desktop, could run on Windows 10 for that matter, although we would recommend server software, but it does need to be a Windows-based platform.
Okay, great.
Great question. Absolutely. Anybody else? And keep in mind, no such thing as a bad question or a dumb question. This is all new and exciting, and with all the great stuff, and especially with everything that we've covered today, hopefully it wasn't too much. And so, yeah, all that great stuff.
So maybe just while we're waiting, Ross, Genevieve, did you get your email? I think you were one of the recipients that should have got that email.
Yes, I did. I did get it, and it was nice. It said, Umango is thinking of you at the time. 1:20 today. You were searching for some information. So yeah, no, it's a great email. Thank you.
So there you go. And the purpose of that was really just to demonstrate how we can do a full email merge using that metadata that we're lifting off the document. We're not just limited to being able to route an email based on a user, but we can essentially do what we do like where you might do a mail merge in Word. You can do that in Umango as well. So it kind of demonstrates a bit of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
that's a
powerful.
good point. Really good.
The other thing we'll touch on there, so there's not dead air, and I love to talk when I get a chance. So Genevieve was asking about connectors, what's available out there. We can certainly provide you with the current list, but it's always a growing list. So never assume that if you don't see it on our current list that we can't connect to it, for lots of reasons. So not only may we already have a standard connector, but we have many and varied ways of connecting to back-end systems. It doesn't necessarily mean we need a dedicated connector. We can do it by script sometimes. Very often, particularly if the document is going into a document management system of some sort, scanning to a watched folder and outputting out of Umango, maybe an XML of the metadata alongside the file is often a very effective way of getting into a system that we may not have a dedicated connector for. And in addition to that, we have just recently actually released a web service connector, which means that pretty much any back-end system that provides an API via a web service, for those of you that kind of understand what that means, we can use kind of point and click configuration within our Umango web service connector to be able to connect directly into that system. So it means there's no need to get programmers involved. We can configure that very quickly just using a standard connector. So there are many ways of connecting to those back-end systems, but we certainly have connectivity for all the things you would assume. We probably tick all those boxes, all the cloud-based stuff that is common. And then there are many of those kind of vertical back-end systems as well that we can connect into.
One I would actually ask in particular, and this just happened to come up, and because a customer requested, can they do it with PaperCut, and we couldn't, is OnBase.
Yeah, so off the top of my head, I don't think we've got a standard on-base connector, but that would be a very good example of a system that would almost certainly have a hot folder function where Umango could send off a file with a XML alongside containing metadata and information on how to file the file away, and OnBase would be able to pick it up and process it. So the connectivity is pretty seamless and is as good as a connector. And then you would also have that option to use the web request connector as well. So lots of flexibility there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's the beauty of it. You know, guys, at the end of the day, you know, it's a very flexible platform. We have the essentials, the standard, and the pro. You know, for larger environments, we're almost always going to start at pro, and then we can work our way down as the customer says, hey, you know, maybe there is you know, some more cost savings to just doing what we really need. Like, you know, spending $2,800 to get pro is great, but I really would like to only do this, and I'm really looking for the most cost-effective way of doing so. And we can really dumb it down. But I like to start higher and then work my way down and then talk about the features they would miss out, right? So, hey, at this price, you know, this is going to give you everything that you requested plus some. And if they say, well, we don't really want the plus some, we'd rather just stick at, you know, base bare minimum. Okay, absolutely. Just know that we can do exactly as requested, but here's some of the things that you're missing out on. And that really helps to encourage them to look a little deeper and to explore that. Now, it's not to say that just like with the other example we used, that they wouldn't end up maybe upgrading later down the road. There is an upgrade path to go from version to version, allowing for some discount opportunities and all that great stuff. So I think that's a good point to kind of wrap it up for everyone. I want to say thank you again. I really appreciate y'all taking the time to join today. And thanks, Genevieve, for being a good sport with the email. Sunny, you as well. And everyone, enjoy the rest of your week, and hopefully you have a great weekend as well. Talk to y'all soon.